When my children were in preschool, I realized I liked them better after we had been to a playground. Maybe you have had experience with that or seen it firsthand. And if you have, then honestly, if that's the case, don't you have to wonder why have schools cut back on PE and recess? I mean, I guess they like making things hard for teachers and students, or maybe, just maybe, the ones who are actually making the decisions about this haven't been in the classroom teaching in a really long time. Because I tell you what, any teacher will tell you calm, happy students aren't the norm anymore. The norm is wiggly children who can't attend, can't sit still, can't keep their hands off each other, can't follow directions, and cannot listen. And guess what? It isn't their fault. They can't help it. But we can fix it. And fixing it is inexpensive, logical, based on brain science, and it isn't hard to do. My name is Preston Blackburn. I've spent the past 25 years helping schools get kids moving for improved learning and behavior. Sometimes it feels like an uphill battle because our culture is working against our kids. Our education culture is designed for sedentary behaviors, sitting at desks for instruction, plowing through worksheets, and taking tests. But this is not how the brain works. The brain depends on the movement of the body to lay neural connections that help it understand how to use the body to attend, to learn, and ultimately to succeed. And when we fail to give the brain what it needs to learn, then we make school harder than it should be. We make learning no fun. And what do kids do when something is no fun? They don't do it. Is that how we want to educate our kids? Think about this. For all of human history, children have spent the vast majority of their time in physical play. And it wasn't until the early 2000s that all of that came to a hard stop. Their school day got significantly more sedentary as decisions were made to trade PE and recess for more academics in an effort to improve test scores, which did not work. And their after-school time became more sedentary. Think about the explosion of screen time for which children have swapped traditional forms of after-school play. Physical play came to a hard stop. And think about what that means. First, when kids aren't moving, they aren't building muscle. They become weak, which has obvious health consequences. But frankly, as a society, we are way past the health issues that these changes have brought about. I want to focus on weakness as a lever to help convey how little children move. A study came out of Australia in 2013 that found that cardiovascular endurance in children is declining at a rate of 5% per decade, which meant that in 2013, it took kids a minute and a half longer to run a mile than it took kids of the same age in the 1980s. That's a lot. That's a significant amount of time. And what's more concerning is that another decade has passed since this study was done, and it included a pandemic shutdown. Come on, we got to admit, there's absolutely nothing to indicate that these numbers will have improved or even flatlined. By all logic, they've probably gotten worse. Now, the team at my company, Pivot to Play, has found that children don't really know how to move their bodies for lack of practice. This means too many of today's children don't really have confidence in what their bodies can do. So moving is no fun. Again, for children, if something isn't fun, will they be inclined to do it? No, not if they don't have to. And what happens if they aren't inclined to move? They fall into a downward spiral of more sedentary behavior. But on the upside, my team and I have found that the more opportunities we give them to move, the more confidence they gain in moving their bodies and the more they enjoy moving. They learn what their bodies can do and begin to use them more successfully for play. The more they use their bodies for play, the stronger their bodies get. Now, let's transfer that to the classroom and consider what we expect kids to get out of school. We expect them to learn to read and write, to be able to add and subtract. It's on this foundation that they will learn how to read Chaucer, master algebra, and more. If they don't have a strong foundation in reading, writing, and math, then those other things are much harder to achieve. We also know that we cannot expect a child to learn and read or write or remember basic math facts if they're hungry. That is why so many schools offer breakfast and lunch programs. If those bellies are full, then the 3 R's are obviously going to be more accessible. And it makes sense. I get it. And children should have full bellies before we ask them to learn. But there is much more to this than just full bellies, a lot more. The children who need breakfast and lunch at school qualify based on need, meaning it doesn't impact all children, just some children. But what I'm talking about impacts all children. As a nation, we are facing an enormous decline in physical fitness and physical activity that is affecting every race, every religion, and every socioeconomic background. There's a gap between what children need before we ask them to learn and what we are asking them to learn. It is a gap we have created. It is a gap that didn't exist in previous generations. And it's a gap that can be easily filled inexpensively. But for some reason, administrators and decision makers just don't see it. Think about this. A child who cannot keep his body still, who is in constant motion, also cannot be expected to tackle the 3 R's. A child who is aggressively wrestling friends or body slamming walls and floors cannot learn to read or hold a pencil. So we can feed a child all day long, but if he can't attend, he still cannot learn. The gap I'm talking about, this gap can only be filled with movement. Physicality and moving the body builds strength in the body while helping the brain understand what the body can do. That is the gap that has to be filled. Have you ever heard that we should eat an apple whole rather than just its juice? That the fiber that comes with the juice and flesh and the rest of the apple contains higher concentrations of fiber, vitamins, flavonoids, and it all improves the way we digest the apple, making more of it useful for our bodies? Well, Mother Nature designed it that way for our benefit. Taking an apple in parts, juice versus flesh, removing the skin, etc., reduces its potency for our bodies. An apple has to be eaten as a whole to be the most effective. Well, our bodies and brains were designed the same way. Our bodies and brains were designed to work together, not separately. But as a culture, we tend to think our bodies were built just to be the vehicle to carry around our brains to think for us, which is entirely false. Our brains need our bodies to understand the world and to operate effectively in it. When we keep children still, we are giving them half of what they need to learn. It's like giving them half a pencil, half a book, half a desk, or even half of an equation and expecting them to be successful. It's not possible. It's not fair. And it is making school so much harder than it should be. The truth is, our brains need our bodies in order to perform at the highest and most effective level. And children show us every day how much their brains need their bodies to move. When we open the door to the classroom, the gate to the playground, or the door to the gym, what do? Well, I ask this question in professional development training sessions, and teachers always answer the same thing. They run. Yes, but that's not the only thing they do. They take off running, yes, but they also scream in delight. In 25 years of leading and designing big physical play programming and curriculum, I have never started a running game where the children sit down and start crying. Even the children who are the least confident movers take off running and screaming in delight. This is Mother Nature's way of telling them to move their bodies. Move their bodies to feed their brains exactly what they need for appropriate development. But our education culture does the opposite, the exact opposite. We make children sit still. We make them move quietly and slowly. You know, the whole bubble in your mouth, walking feet. We do that because that is what we as adults need, but it is far from what children need. They need to move. They need to move a lot more. And the brain science behind this is mind-blowing. Check out our website linked below. For more information, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Pivot to Play. And get our newsletter, also linked below. Also, look for more videos posted here on YouTube about the brain science of moving for learning. And if you liked what you just heard or want to hear more, subscribe, because we have a lot more coming. Just remember, our responsibility as the adults is to make learning easier, more accessible, and ultimately more fun for kids. If we can do this, I am sure our literacy rates will improve, classrooms will be places of happy learning, and teachers will stay in the profession. It isn't rocket science, it's brain science, and it's logical, and I can assure you it's 1,000% developmentally appropriate. Very cool.
Do you have any earrings too?